I was glad when they said to me, 'Let us go to the Lord's house.' And now we are here, standing inside the gates of Jerusalem. Jerusalem is a city that's been restored in beauty, order, and harmony. This is where the tribes come, the tribes of Israel, to give thanks to the Lord according to his commands. Here the kings of Israel sat to judge their people. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May those who love you prosper. May there be peace inside your walls and safety in your palaces. For the sake of my relatives and friends, I say to Jerusalem, peace be with you. For the sake of the house of the Lord our God, I pray for your posterity."
Right, so it's coming to that time of year again. The C word. The stuff's all on the shop shelves already, isn't it? From the beginning of August. And within a few weeks, you'll walk into the shops and you'll hear it. It's the old, oh, here it is, Merry Christmas. You'll be fed up with it by the time it's December. But there you go. It's on its way. I'm not sure what happens in your family, but most families, you have your traditions, don't you? The stuff you do leading up to an event. When I was a child, we'd moved from Manchester, where I was born. We moved to the south, and so we used to go back to Manchester at Christmas, and my mum and dad would pack up the car and put me and my brother in the back seat. No seat belts then. And we didn't know, but we were sleeping on our Christmas presents. My mum used to put them all under then off we'd go. Same service station every year. We'd look out for certain bridges. We used to have this old-fashioned tape of songs we'd put in, and we'd sing them on the way. And then finally, as we turned the corner of the road to my grandparents, we'd count down from 100, and get very slowly, and we'd get to 100, and it was in the front door, and, my grandmother had this bell that we used to pull this thing, and it used to play. What did it used to play? I can't remember now. I was trying to remember, but it used to get slower and slower and slower and slower until it eventually, about every half an hour, it would make this noise. And we'd all jump. But anyway, that was it. I love Christmas markets now. Jamie doesn't share my enthusiasm for these. I like the whole feelings and everything of it, all the kind of bits and pieces, the German sausage. I love all that. Anyway, I'm just letting you know because he never takes me to any of them. Okay. So anyway, all these things, they add together, don't they, for family events? We all have different ones, and they stretch back centuries, some of them. Our great-grandparents probably did these things. They've been passed on to us. And really, in some ways, this is kind of what Psalm 122 is meant to be. It's kind of a calling together. It's a preparation, as it were. So, nice and easy for me. I've done it all in different colours so I don't get lost. There you go. So we start with, it's gone. It starts with coming to Jerusalem, or the joy of coming to God's house. Now, this psalm was used by pilgrims on their journey towards Jerusalem. That's kind of what David wrote it for. He wrote it so they had something to prepare themselves with. There was 3 great feasts they'd go up for. I might get this wrong, by the way. I'm aware that I've got Rod and Penny in front of me here, and they will tell me afterwards everything I've got wrong, so great. I'm looking forward to that. Anyway, 3 times a year they would go up to Jerusalem, and the Passover was the big one. We know this was the case because Jesus and his family went up to Jerusalem for the Passover. And it says in Luke, every year Jesus' parents went to Jerusalem for the feast of the Passover. When Jesus was 12 years old, they went up to the festival according to the custom. So Jesus would have sung this on the way up to Jerusalem. I'm sure the Jews still do this regularly. It is the preparation psalm. So there you go. It begins, I was glad when they said to me, let's go to the house of the Lord. When David wrote it, he wasn't just thinking of himself, he was thinking about the community around him. I suppose it's reasonable to believe he wrote this because he was very excited about the fact that he'd built his capital city, and he wanted to encourage love and loyalty towards it, which would make sense. It was the focus of the nation's political life and worship. It's a bit like we have, in this country anyway, we have somebody we call the poet laureate, or the official composers. And I don't even know who it is at the moment. I should have looked that up. But on special events like coronations, we've had quite a few bigger special events recently, with the passing of our late Queen, much loved late Queen, and our new King, special music's written. I was at this point going to play you one of my favourites, but it goes on a little bit. Zadok the Priest, written by Handel in 1727 and been used for all our sovereigns since then. Fantastic piece of music. And it does exactly what this psalm is intended to do. It's the anticipation of this coming and something amazing happening. Go home, listen to it later. Frederick Handel, Zadok the Priest. There you go, there's your homework. Fantastic. So in David's day, of course, there wasn't actually a physical temple. He was writing about one, but it wasn't actually there then. They still had the tabernacle, the tent. I'm assuming it had a few patches on by now, but they'd been using the same tabernacle that Moses built. So it says here in 1 Chronicles, devote your heart and soul to seeking the Lord your God, to begin to build the sanctuary of the Lord God, that you might bring the Ark of the Covenant, the Lord, and the sacred articles belonging to God into the temple that will be built for the name of the Lord. So David wrote this in anticipation of the pilgrims coming to the house of the Lord to be built by his son. So it was a prophetic psalm, really. It hadn't happened yet, but it would be doing. It's wonderful to think how extensively David was preparing for it, for the people to come. It's good to plan and prepare for special events, as David said this morning. Dave, not that one. Said this morning, we've got special events coming up. You can invite friends, you can invite family, or you can invite strangers to come to church. We've got the Alpha course coming. You can get yourself ready, get yourself some invites going, have them round for dinner, slowly ply them with gifts, and invite them to Alpha. Why not? You've got a whole week. Get on with it. There's the Christmas service as well, which is a bit further away. You know, get a few Christmas cards in, get a few chocolate wrap gifts. You never know. I like to think David might have wrote this, by the way, when he brought the ark back into the city brought that into the city in 2 Samuel, where he famously danced in his underwear. I think that would have been a good time to write a psalm in your underwear. Why not? Anyway, for David, coming into the house, the Lord made him happy. He obviously knew a building can't contain the full glory of God, but it was important for him to have a place where the community could focus. He was glad when they said, let's go to the house of the Lord. He was a king, but he'd grown up a shepherd, and later a musician, and also a warrior. He'd spent time with God before he became a king. He didn't come fully formed. Jamie and I was trying to get Jamie to help me find a quote. This is quite a famous quote by an Indian pastor and author, a guy called Mahesh Chavda. Did we ever meet him? Yeah, we did. Anyway, he said famously, prayer is where everything begins and ends in the spirit. As believers, we must have a hidden place in the Lord to have a public place in the Lord. No secret history, no public miracles. It's quite hard, isn't it? But it's true. And David had that. He'd had a personal relationship with God long before he became a king. So then, does coming into the house of the Lord make you glad? It's quite an old-fashioned word, really, isn't it? Too many of us don't really know the gladness that David sang of because they either don't go to the house of the Lord, or when they do go, it's not a glad thing for them. It's important to gather as God's people for prayer and worship and receiving of the word, and it should be a family event. It should be formal and ordered enough, so it's regarded as a gathering of God's house, but it should be a glad thing. But it's not the same as saying it should be entertaining, especially in an age where entertainment is a bit of an obsession and can be an idol. If you're coming to church to be entertained, you're coming for the wrong reasons. So if you find me boring, tough. That's not why I'm here. I'm not here to entertain you. Not everything that happens in church should be fun, but it should be good. We should be welcoming to the non-believer and good for the believers. If going into the house of the Lord is not a glad thing, the problem might be in the heart of the person who's coming. Or it might be what happens here or in the house of the Lord. If you love the Lord but struggle with the church, it's a bit like having a child that you love but you don't much like their personality. I had one of those. It takes I'm not saying, wasn't you, although you have your challenges. Remember, Christian life isn't a spectator sport. You get out of it what you put into it. The church is full of people, and we're messy, and we make stupid mistakes, and we upset one another. But if you're struggling with not feeling that the house of the Lord is a glad place to be, you can get prayer for yourself, or you can speak to one of our lovely elders with some constructive suggestions about how it could be a better place. You never know. There's always constructive things. There's the first bit. Right, the happy arrival. This is shorter. Our feet have been standing within your gates, O Jerusalem. Most regard this as David's description of the joyful place of the pilgrim who's arrived. The joy and the gladness of coming and arriving at your destination, the kind of Christmas morning, or are we there yet, is all over. The first day of the holidays, the arrival of a longed for event, and we had one of these recently. Our daughter got married, as we've said. So much prep, and then it's the day, and it's all over with quite quickly. But at last, you wake up and think, oh, there's nothing else I can do. Today's the day. So this is it. This is the place that David set up for the ark, but his vision, as we've said, was for the future glory of the Lord. He looked towards the temple with the eye of the prophet, not just the temple that Solomon was going to build. I like to think that David was looking to the future kingdom, the perfect kingdom, the kingdom that was to come. When we come to the house of the Lord here, we're not just building here in Whitchurch. We're looking towards the real home that we're going to, our eternal home. That's what we want here in the town. We don't want it just here. If it doesn't make us glad to be in God's presence here, I wonder what we'll think when we get to heaven. I wonder if we'll enjoy our eternal home if we don't enjoy being in God's house here. I'll leave you with that one. Okay. I keep thinking it's going to be up there, and it's not. Sorry. Describing Jerusalem. A prosperous, unified city, Jerusalem is built as a city that is compact together, where the tribes go up, the tribes of the Lord, to the testimony of Israel, to give thanks to the name of the Lord. So David conquered the city of Jerusalem. He took it from a group called the Jebusites, it was a Canaanite stronghold. It was foreign. It didn't belong to the Israelites. He'd conquered it, and so he loved pronouncing Jerusalem is built. It wasn't a set of tents. It wasn't a set of shacks. It was an actual city built with big stones. I've got a quote here from Spurgeon. It says, "It matters not how wicked or degraded a place may have been in its former times, when it is sanctified to the use and service of God, it becomes honourable, even if it's an ex-supermarket." Okay? So the building is not the big deal. It's the presence of God that is the big deal. Okay? Just so you know. The original Jerusalem, or David's Jerusalem, wasn't even a big place. It says, another quote here, it says, "During David's reign, as sometime thereafter, Jerusalem was a small city, located on the crest of Mount Zion and Mount Moriah, bounded on two sides by steep descents, and thus no more than half a mile in breadth. It had a dramatic setting for one approaching it from a distance." So it wasn't even very big, half a mile. I mean, for goodness sakes, I think Whitchurch is bigger than that. You know, it wasn't even a big place, but it was there, and you could see it from a long way away. Don't know if any of you have ever been to St. Michael's Mount. Have you been to St. Michael's Mount? Or its opposite friend in France, Le Mont Saint-Michel. Very impressive. You can see them from a long way away. So Jerusalem was a bit like that, and you could see it from a distance. So you could imagine them singing as they went towards it. Okay. The expression compacted together. Interestingly, here you go. Here's a bit of Bible knowledge for you. It's the same verb as found in the instructions for making the tent of worship. It says in... So in Exodus, it says it was coupled the tent together so that it may be of one whole. Interestingly, it's very similar to the verb used in Colossians, and all of these virtues put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. So the idea of it being unified. As it says, this is the blueprint for the ultimate reality in the heavenly Jerusalem. It speaks of how the church should be. One in creed, one in heart, one in testimony and one in service, one in aspiration and one in sympathy. They greatly injure our Jerusalem, who would build dividing walls within her. She needs compacting, not dividing. Spurgeon said that. One of the reasons David conquered Jerusalem and established it as the capital of the religious and political life in Israel was because it didn't belong to a specific tribe. It wasn't already one belonging to any of the particular tribes of Israel at this point. So, since it belonged to no tribe, it belonged to all the tribes. So, they could come together as one at the house of Jerusalem, the house of the Lord, because they were equal and on an equal footing. This is quite a lesson to us, because as Christians we should essentially be one. We may come from various backgrounds, various causes. We may have come from different church backgrounds, different traditions, but we should, in effect, be one. Many branches, one tree. Many ideas, one God. Many forms of worship, one God we worship. Okay. The testimony of Israel, this is an interesting one. The testimony of Israel was actually the Ark of the Covenant. That's what it's described as. It's mentioned a few times in the Old Testament. That's where the tablets were that Moses wrote on. Moses had the Ten Commandments written on. They were inside the Ark of the Covenant. It was the seat of God for the Israelites. It was the most holy place. Okay, they came to give thanks. The primary reason for the feasts of Israel, the Israelites back then, were to give thanks, to give appreciation to God for what he's done. They weren't to seek anything out, not for unity, not to seek prosperity. They came as a result of wanting to thank God. We say that quite a lot, don't we? If you're thankful for things, you're more likely to see your prayers answered, because you're looking to what God's already done for you. And then it's easy to believe him for what he's going to do for you. Okay. Number 4, city of justice and righteous rule. For thrones are set here for judgment, the thrones for the house of David. So Jerusalem was the seat of government. It was established as a city for dispensing judgment. There's a lovely bit in the book of Ruth where Boaz goes to the gates of the city where the elders are sat to negotiate for a piece of land that belonged to Naomi's family. What he's actually doing is trying to release Ruth from the obligations so that he can marry her. But he has to deal with kind of the land first. It's complicated, but you can go and read it in the book of Ruth. It's lovely. And he takes off his sandal to say, it's been dealt with. That's how they did it. But at this point in history, justice was very fluid, let's say that. We're very fortunate to live in a country with a very well-established legal system. If you've ever lived anywhere without one, you'll fully appreciate this. If you speak to Grace about what happens in Nigeria or other countries, the establishing of justice and righteous rule is an incredibly liberating thing, to know that you can get justice. If you've never lived like that, you can't really appreciate how good it is to have it. So number 5, praying for Jerusalem. We pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May they prosper who love you. Peace be within your walls, prosperity within your palaces. For the sake of my brethren and companions, I will now say, peace be with you. Jerusalem as a city hasn't known a lot of peace in its history. It sees a lot of war and conflict. So it is good to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And it's good to pray for the peace of the church all over the world. One of the main ingredients of success is internal peace. If you have strife or suspicion, division, they're deadly things. If you're breaking the peace, somebody's peace, a family's peace, if something breaks a community's peace, it destroys it. And you're blessed if you can bring peace. May they prosper who love you. David was wanting to bless his community, and he wanted peace and prosperity in his city. The Hebrew word for prosperity means to be secure, tranquil, at rest. The essential idea is quietness and rest, and the meaning here is those who love the dwelling place of God will have peace. So here's a lovely blessing. May prosperity ever reside within your walls, on all the people that dwell there, and tranquility within the palaces or high places, amongst the rulers and governors of the people. We should be praying these for our towns and our countries and our leaders, for the sake of our brethren and companions. Bless your community. It's right to pray for other churches and other Christian leaders. They're openly attacked every day. You don't have to agree with them. You don't have to like them. You don't have to like the churches they belong to. But let your words be a blessing and your prayers generous. Okay, the reason to pray and seek for Jerusalem, because the house of the Lord God is there, I will seek your good. David understood that gladness and goodness of the pilgrim towards God's city was not primarily political. It wasn't because of loyalty to a political party or leader or philosophy. It was just because the house of the Lord was there. What makes the church special? That it is God's house, or it's the expression of God's house in a community. I mean, we're God's house, really, aren't we? The people. The building is just an expression, and people can look to it, and they know that when they see it, that's where the people meet who love God. We can seek the good of the church, and when I say the church and I'm doing that, I mean us, for the sake of society. when we, hang on, I'm losing myself here. When we seek the good, it's not like looking for a pin. It's not mindless. It requires labour. It requires... Oh, that's probably telling me I should finish now, and I'm literally on the last page or so. I literally am on the last page. We should be actively seeking the good of something. You know, we're just saying, oh, you know, the church is a good thing. Yes, but we should be actively doing it. So if we want the place we live to prosper and do well, seek the good in the church. Because we love it. We want the presence of God here and out there, we have to love the place that is the house of God, is the place we come. And if we love it, we'll work for it. If you love your kids, you do stuff for them. You know, if you love your spouse, you do nice things for them. Yeah, if you love your car, you polish it on a Sunday afternoon. You know, you don't just say, oh, you know, church, I'm just going to turn up. It's more than that. It's more than that. So, David loved the house of the Lord. He prepared for it. He had a vision for it. He could see it for more than it physically was. He was prepared to put his time into it, his money into it, his prayers into it. And he was prepared to see the greatness of it for the future.